So today, we're going to dive into something pretty different called DeSciX. It's a whole new model that's really built for creators, for scientists, for innovators, anyone with a big idea. The whole point is to create a system that helps you fund, develop, and, this is the key part, actually own your intellectual property, so you can sidestep all those classic traps set by big tech and venture capital. The real question is, how does it actually work?
Well, to really get what this is all about, let's start with a puzzle. Let's put you in the driver's seat for a second. Imagine you're a small startup, let's call it Pouch LLC, and you have a patent for some game-changing tech. And you're pretty sure a multi-trillion-dollar giant like Apple is using it in their passkey system. So what do? How do you even begin to fight that battle? The answer is probably not what you think, and it's the absolute key to understanding this entire model.
All right, here's how we're going to break this all down. First, we're going to look at what's called the innovator's trap. You know, the big problem that DeSciX is even trying to solve. Then we'll get into the DeSciX community model itself. After that, we'll dive into the specifics of how you, the contributor, actually earn ownership. We'll look at the endgame, this thing called an IP IPO, and finally, and this is maybe the most important part, we'll dig into the pillars that make this whole thing credible.
Okay, so first things first, the problem. Why do we even need a new model? Well, it all comes down to the brutal reality of what happens to great ideas in the world today.
You see, right now, innovators pretty much get stuck in one of two nasty traps. The first is that David versus Goliath trap. That's the Pow versus Apple scenario we just talked about. Even if you have a rock-solid patent, the legal fees to fight a tech giant are just insane. It's basically impossible to enforce your rights. Then there's the OpenAI trap. This one's subtle. A project starts out all open and collaborative, builds a massive global community, and then boom, it pivots, goes closed source, and a tiny group of founders and VCs capture literally billions in value, leaving the very community that built it with nothing.
And, as if that wasn't enough, there's a huge trust problem, especially in the crypto world. I mean, think about this. In 2021, over a third of all crypto scam revenue came from what are called rug pulls. That's where the developers just disappear with everyone's money. So the bottom line is, any new model coming into this space has to fight an uphill battle against skepticism. It has to be fundamentally fair, and more than anything, it has to be credible.
Okay, so that's the problem. And that's exactly where the DeSciX community model steps in. It's an ecosystem that has been designed from the ground up to solve these very specific problems of value, ownership, and trust.
At the very heart of this is a new idea called community source. Think of it like the best of both worlds. It takes that amazing collaborative spirit from open source, but it wraps it in an ironclad legal agreement. And built right into that agreement are ways for contributors to earn real, actual ownership and for the whole community, not some corporation, to control how the value gets captured.
And their whole mantra, the core idea, is super simple but really powerful. Open inside, value return outside. What does that mean? Well, open inside means that within the community, everyone collaborates. Knowledge is shared, ideas are built on freely. But, and this is the value return outside part, if someone takes that IP and uses it commercially outside the ecosystem, the framework kicks in to make sure the value flows back to the people who actually built it.
Now, to really help you wrap your head around this, they use this brilliant metaphor. Think of the whole DeSciX ecosystem as a virtual university. The first step is you join the university. You become a member of the DAO and agree to the rules. Then, inside, you can form a college, basically a community that's focused on a specific field of IP, like AI or health tech. And finally, you get to work building things in the university's app store, creating the tools and knowledge that bring your IP to life.
All right, this is the big one, the question on everyone's mind. Why would I do this? What's in it for the developers, the scientists, the people actually doing the work? What makes this attractive?
And the answer is a total game changer. It's a fundamental shift in how we think about value. In this model, your contribution is your investment. Let me say that again. Your contribution is your investment. You don't need a fat check from a VC to get a piece of the pie. Your code, your data, your research, even your ability to bring people into the network, that hard work is what earns you a direct, verifiable stake in the IP itself.
And this chart breaks it down perfectly. Let's say you're a developer, an app creator. You build a cool AI tool on the platform. Well, you can get paid directly, earning a majority of the fees. Or maybe you're a knowledge creator. You contribute a valuable data set or a key piece of code that other people use. For that, you earn what are called DIP points for digital IP. And if you're a network builder who brings in new active users, you earn ref points for referrals. And the best part, all these different points, they're your slice of the pie. They literally become your ownership tokens.
Okay, so you've put in the work, you're earning your stake, but then what? Where does this all lead? How does that digital ownership turn into real-world value? This is where the model gets really interesting with its most novel idea, the IP IPO. Every project goes through this really clear life cycle, a clear journey. It kicks off in a private incubation phase. This is where all the R&D happens, and contributors are earning their tokens, but they can't be traded yet. Next is the validation phase, where the focus shifts to proving the IP works and has a real user base. That all leads to a critical moment, a vote by the entire DeSciX community, the DAO. If everyone agrees the project is ready for prime time, the IP IPO event is triggered, and poof, the tokens transfer restrictions are gone for good.
So you might be thinking, okay, IPO, I've heard of that. But hold on, an IP IPO is a totally different beast. A regular stock IPO sells off pieces of a company, and the value and control are all held by a small group of founders and VCs. An IP IPO unlocks liquidity for a stake in the intellectual property itself. The value is based purely on how useful the IP is, and the decision to go public is controlled by the entire community of contributors. It's a path to liquidity for the creators, not just the capitalists.
All right, I know what you're thinking. This sounds almost too good to be true. And with all the rug pulls and scams out there, why on earth should anyone trust this system? What makes it credible?
Well, its credibility is built on three really solid pillars. First, a new and most importantly enforceable legal framework. Second, a super secure, zero-knowledge technical architecture. And third, something that's just starting to bubble up, real interest from institutional players who are finally taking this space seriously.
Okay, let's talk law for a second, because this is actually fascinating. The whole legal backbone of this model stands on the shoulders of a U.S. federal court case, Jacobson v. Katzer. What this case established is that if you break the rules of an open source license, it's not just a simple breach of contract. It can be treated as full-blown copyright infringement. This isn't just a slap on the wrist. This is the legal nuclear option that gives that value return outside principle real, powerful, enforceable teeth.
Next up, the tech. The core wallet is called Pouch, and it's designed to be a software ledger. This table shows you how it stacks up against a typical hardware wallet, like a ledger. Instead of a special chip, it uses the secure enclave that's already in your phone or laptop. Instead of a physical button, it uses your fingerprint or Face ID. But the most important part is the security model. It's zero knowledge. That means the central server literally has zero knowledge of your private keys. It sees nothing. You get hardware-level security with the convenience of software.
And the third pillar, which is huge, is market credibility. This isn't just some fringe idea anymore. Big-time venture arms like YZ Labs from Binance are now specifically putting money into DeSci projects. And others, like Coinbase Ventures, are pouring money into all the tech that supports it. Things like AI, privacy, and real-world assets. When you see names like Binance and Coinbase seriously getting into this space, you know something big is happening.
So, let's bring it all home with one final big question that takes us right back to that innovator's trap. What if the next world-changing, open AI-level breakthrough wasn't owned and controlled by a handful of people in a boardroom? What if it was truly owned, from start to finish, by the global community of creators, researchers, and builders who poured their energy into bringing it to life? That's the future this model is fighting for.